Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to this second live webinar hosted by 𝗧𝘂𝗍𝗍, which actually celebrates its first anniversary this year. When putting together the overall event program, the rise of new technologies in general and also of blockchain in particular and their application to capital markets came naturally as one of the hot topics that the 𝗧𝘂𝗍𝗍 wanted to cover. And the interest for this topic made that we actually dedicate 2 sessions to the use of new technologies in capital markets. Objectives being twofold. One is to raise awareness about the groundbreaking changes that are happening both locally and globally. And secondly, to trigger a debate within the Luxembourg capital markets community around the challenge that these new technologies raise and also the opportunities that they offer. And within the latter category, the opportunities that we could or we should collectively progress in order to strengthen the place of Luxembourg as leading financial center in Europe. Last week, we had the privilege to listen to some of our esteemed colleagues telling us more about this legislative work that is in progress both in Luxembourg and in Europe, and which should pave the way for the adoption of DLT technology and tokenization in the field of securities issuance. And today our intention is actually to build upon that first session and to explore in the form of a panel discussion if and where we should actually leverage this new technology in the context of public capital markets. And secondly, what is the key difference to be expected what is the key difference that this technology is expected to make amid an overarching widespread digital transformation journey that impact and involve all of us. To help me navigating through this kind of thought-provoking discussion, I've had called for the support of some distinguished experts in their respective fields, and I'm going to ask them to introduce briefly themselves and tell us a bit more about their field of expertise, their background. So let's start with ladies, and I'll ask Biba to come first.
Hi everybody, nice to be here with you. For those who do not know me, I'm an attorney at law in Luxembourg and in Switzerland, and I'm the president of the board and co-founder of the Luxembourg Blockchain Association called the 𝗪𝗲𝗄𝗏. And I'm also representing Luxembourg in ISO for blockchain and AI.
My apologies, I was looking for the unmute button. Can I ask Emilie to go next, please?
Hello, well, thank you for having me today. I'm Emilie Allaert, I'm the head of operations and projects at the 𝗨𝗏𝗏 Foundation. We are helping fintech to soft land in Europe and especially via Luxembourg. And I'm dedicating a lot of my time on the blockchain and crypto assets topics via 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗏 working group, via different reports that we published via the 𝗨𝗏𝗏 and working groups with lawyers in the industry, especially on DAGEs and ICOs. So this is my kind of lucky topic at the moment, and we are also working on developing the Luxembourg Blockchain Lab, which should hopefully see the light early next year.
All right, thank you, Emilie. Then I'll ask Raja to introduce himself.
My name is Raja Palaniappan. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Origin. We are a London-based fintech company, just crossed our 5th anniversary, and we build a platform that helps streamline and digitize the process for issuing fixed income securities, so issuing bonds in the public capital markets. And we have just over 20 investment banks on board and just under 100 frequent borrowers on board our platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Raja. I'll now ask the 2 Laurent to go to go ahead, and we start with Laurent Marochini.
Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you so much for the invitation. I'm Laurent Marochini. I'm Head of Innovation for Société Générale Security Services in Luxembourg. I'm also blockchain leader for Société Générale Group. And regarding this system, I'm a co-chairman of the 𝗙𝗪𝗓 working group in blockchain and crypto with Emilie, of course, and I'm also chairman at the 𝗘𝗃𝗲𝗅 for the task force blockchain.
Thank you. We go to the next, Laurent.
Hello, my name is Laurent Kratz. Thank you for having me this afternoon. So I'm the CEO of NEOFACTO. It's a Luxembourgish services company. We serve several customers in the context of blockchain, mainly Société Générale in Paris, where we help them to emit tokenized bonds, but also we are involved with them in the project we do with CBDC and Banque de France. I started also a company named 𝗧𝗏𝗄𝗅𝗓, which is the European leader for everything anti-money laundering about crypto assets. We have roughly 100 customers, not 100,000. And last but not least, we just started a company in Estonia whose name is 𝗘𝗃𝗄𝗅𝗍, whose aim is to emit euro stablecoin.
All right, thank you, Laurent, and thank you, everyone. As you can see, this is quite an impressive lineup. And so I do expect this topic to attract a lot of interest, and I would invite our audience to not to hesitate and to make use of the Q&A functionality that you can find at the bottom of your screen. There is a little icon with a question mark normally, so feel free to raise your questions. We've put some time aside at the end of the panel to address them, and we'll, of course, select the most provoking ones. So let me start by introducing the topic of the day, and perhaps by stating the obvious. This third decade of the 21st century will actually be the era of digital adoption, or will not be. And I think we've all observed over the recent years an acceleration of digital transformation in many sectors, and financial industry has been no exception to that. Digitization, robotization, AI, blockchain, tokenization are no longer simple buzzwords, but what we've observed is that they've been gradually and increasingly adopted and integrated into business and operating models. And again, when it comes to financial markets, we're seeing a lot of new business digital solutions flourishing. So I guess no one will actually dispute today that the future of finance and financial instruments is digital. And I guess the recent experience of going through this COVID crisis further exacerbated the need for digital solutions, as some well-established processes were put under an immense level of stress. Now, if we agree to say that the future is digital, I guess the question is, does it need to be, or does it have to be, blockchain-based? And when we apply this to the world of securities, what actually does tokenization bring that digitalization or mere digitalization cannot offer? What are the additional benefits that issuers, that investors, that service providers, or even regulators can expect from security tokens and their related technology that can otherwise not be achieved? In other words, should tokenization be regarded as the ultimate digital step, or is it merely a digital option among many others that is relevant for particular niche or segments? So before we put our feet into these controversial questions, I think it's interesting to take a step back and take stock of where we actually stand in terms of digitalization, in terms of digital evolution of the securities life cycle, and digitalization in its generic sense. So my first question would be for Laurent Marochini. You're part of a large global financial institution which is active across many different steps of the value chain. And I would be interested to get your views about where the EU financial markets stand today in terms of digitalizing the issuance and the servicing of financial instruments.
So thank you. What is very important is that a lot of things have already been done since the first Bitcoin. So now it was in 2008. So we've gone through different stages. The first one was understanding and the emergence of the cryptocurrencies. The second stage was more the frenzy of ICOs, but it's only since roughly 2 years we have seen the arrival of the institutional investors with the different securities token offering. So with the tokenization market as a whole, and especially in the issuance side. So what we have seen, different studies have confirmed the interest and the potential of the STO. So the potential, if you take in consideration the World Economic Forum, roughly 10% of the GDP can be tokenized by 2027. So we have a huge potential and a market of roughly 24 trillion of US dollar. And in terms of interest, in terms of project, we see a lot of project in tokenization of bonds, equities, real estate, and so on. And I was 2 days before in a conference organized by Banque de France. So Banque de France is very pushing in that topic. And I understand that in France today we have 50 projects in STO. And if you look back to the 2 years before, we have seen STO with World Bank, recently with Bank of Thailand, so with Société Générale. We see newcomers, new startups, new platforms. So I believe that we are in the early days, but it's happening right now. So the question regarding digitalization, yes, indeed, with the COVID, we have seen a lot of new initiatives. We have seen the basic digitalization that took place with electronic signatures, with onboarding, digital onboarding, and it will be done in part of tokenization. So I believe that the future is now. It will change the way we do business in the future and the way we will interact with clients and, of course, new clients. Anyway, I can give the floor to Emilie, probably.
Yeah, certainly. I hope Emilie is with us. Indeed, thank you very much, Laurent. Perhaps just a quick reaction from my side. I think a lot of your response was really already focused on tokenization. It may implicitly tell us a little bit your views about where we should be heading. But certainly, Emilie, I'd be interested to get your views not only on that, but also on the most generic aspect of digitalization, if you have one, of course.
Yeah, sure. Well, what we've seen is that since 2008 and the financial crisis, there is a real will to protect the investors. And while we try to protect the investors, we are increasing the regulations around it, and that's called the regulatory tsunami. And this, in coordination with, or in conjunction with the fact that technology is advancing at a much higher pace than before, we have like a difference between what technology is able to do and what regulation and the type they need to enter into force are able to do. So actually we are observing that at the moment, the regulation, even if it's there to protect the investors, is lagging compared to the technology. So as well, we can say that given the advancement in terms of technology, there is a lot of problems and issues to understand the ultimate goal and to grasp what's behind it. What needs to be done to protect the investors or to protect the infrastructure of the financial institutions. And this is some skills that the authorities need to gain. And this cannot be done in 1 or 2 days or 1 or 2 months. And sometimes it takes way too much time. And we are observing people who have amazing projects who are not able to actually put them into effect or put them into the financial place because there is no regulation to support it. Especially with the ICOs, it was initial coin offering, it was in 2017, there was a huge, let's say, hype around it, but 81% of these were scams. So it gave the bad impression to authorities that everything that is related to tokens, coins, and cryptos are bad, and we need to protect the investors. And instead of trying to understand and maybe project themselves to what they will become in the future, they feared so much that they didn't react. And we are now in a position where everything that is related to blockchain, DLTs, and digital assets is seen at first as a bad thing, and it needs to be like disintegrated into small pieces to actually grasp what's behind and potentially accept it. So I think it's linked to a fear of change, the technology that is going too much, too fast. And we are observing that there is a real will to digitize, but at the moment, it's a little bit difficult.
Okay, thanks. And I'm sure we'll be back on that a little bit later today. Raja, I'd like to give you the floor now because for those who don't know your platform, actually, you guys are providing a platform for the digital issuance of traditional money market and debt securities like CDs, MTNs, or bonds. Can you explain to us your vision in terms of a fully digitalized securities lifecycle? I think it might be interesting for the audience.
Yes, definitely. And yeah, thanks for this opportunity. So I think, you know, we've so far heard a lot of commentary around specific technologies, or, you know, tokenization specifically, or DLT specifically. Our starting point in our framework is slightly orthogonal to a specific technology, but rather we take things initially starting from the market that we're operating in, the customers that we're serving, and what problems those customers have currently or have had in the past, and then trying to find the optimal solution for those customers. So as you say, Arnaud, we work exclusively in the public capital markets with large frequent issuers who are typically issuing off of EMTN programs. So these are large investment grade issuers who are very active in the international capital markets. And the starting point for us is not what technology should we implement into their workflow, but what is the pain point that they currently face. So we're looking at the issuers, the intermediaries, and the investors, and then trying to construct a solution that will help. And overwhelmingly, the major pain point that all three constituencies face is an excess of repetitive tasks and a lack of golden source truth about a new issuance. So if we, and I won't go into the tiny little details, but conceptually, when a new security is conceived, let's say an investment banker with their customer have conceived of a new security, that security, the details of that security are documented, let's say in a term sheet. And then between the time of that security being conceived, being executed and created, and then ultimately being settled, let's say on average, that's 5 days later, the data that's in that document is transferred to a number of different humans across a number of different institutions. And there's a lot of repetitive receiving of that data, processing of that data, and then resending of that data. And generally, the whole thing is happening across Microsoft Word, Microsoft Outlook, and PDF. So from our perspective, we say, okay, well, that lack of golden source and that excess of human manual repetition of and processing of data, that needs to be streamlined. So our vision for a fully digitized securities issuance lifecycle is where a golden source sort of holder of the data that describes a security is captured as far upstream as possible. And then there is a technology layer that communicates all of that data to all of the institutions that need to know about it. Now, we in our platform are doing that without the use of any DLT technology or any tokenization at the moment. We're using what you might consider very basic APIs. So we allow the front office as far upstream as possible. As soon as the security has been conceived, they're documenting it on our platform. Our platform is capturing all the transaction details, and then we disseminate that to all of the other institutions that need it via an API connection that eliminates the manual step. And ultimately, if we can do that, we can shorten the processing time. So specifically, that means the settlement time. And the vision is to ultimately get to a point of same-day settlement. Now, how far we can get with just digitalization and whether or not tokenization is necessary to get all the way to the end state, I think that's a conversation that's up for debate, and we'll obviously be having that. But what we're looking at is okay, from the user's perspective, can we add value today with certain basic technologies, and how can we solve those pain points?
Thank you, Raja. I think you're pointing to the key question here. And by the way, it sounds so simple when explained, you know, through you. Unfortunately, we're far from being there, right, in public capital markets. And I would share your assessment that you know, this golden source issue is probably the most important piece to kill first. I guess that's where indeed DLT technology can be a game changer potentially. And what I'd like to do now is to focus on where indeed tokenization can contribute to making public capital markets more efficient. And I would like to give the floor now to Biba, and I'll ask Biba, as a blockchain expert, our national expert, as I understand, what is your view? Is the use of tokenized securities an integral part of that digital transformation journey? And what does tokenization actually bring on top that issuance digitalization alone cannot achieve?
Okay, so I think your first question is, I think we need to speak a bit about the basic understanding of what we call digitalization, digitization, and so on. On the same level, and actually it's a good thing that we spoke about Raja solution, about light of golden source and so on. I think my vision, but it's a personal vision, we have 3 steps. We have the first very basic step, which we called in French numérisation, which is digitization, if I understand, which basically involved getting paper, scan, and digital formats. Yeah, well, it's involving paper only. Then you have an evolution of a second step for me, which is digitalization, which basically involves processes, leveraging on digitalization to improve your business, but it's processes. And then you have tokenization. Then you have that involve assets. And when you say that tokenized securities are integral part of digital transformation journey, I would say it's one is not opposed to the other. One is probably the continuation of the other, depending on your business model, depending on where you want to go, what you want to use. If you want to processes, your infrastructure, then go for digitalization. Don't go for tokenization. Tokenization brings you a step forward by involving assets, securitization here, for instance, on tokenization on securities, but you probably might not use it as well. It really depends on your business model. And your second question was about tokenization bring on top, which cannot achieve. Again, I think we all know about what tokenization can provide, because it actually brings the value that distributed and decentralized technology into assets and financial instruments. So we all know about it is the efficiency of, again, the transparency, the fact that it's not tampered, it improves liquidity when you have not necessarily when you have illiquid assets. It gives also more efficient time in clearing and settlement. It can provide also access to retail investors, but again, yet it does not bring all you can. It's not one solution, you know. And it's true as well, to be frank, that at the moment of the environment, especially given the legal and regulatory environment, we might not always have the best solution. I mean, of course, there are solutions, and we'll hear today of solutions, but if we take, for instance, intermediate securities. Sometimes you have the issuance of the intermediate securities or the token, and then you have a bridge, and it's not efficient, it's not optimal, and it doesn't bring anything. So bringing a tokenization that is just merely a mirror to a digitalization is not optimal, is not efficient. And if I take, for example, Switzerland, which I know very well, you may know that in 6 months, any institutions, so not necessarily the crypto banks that are regulated in Switzerland, they will be able to directly issue a ledger security, which means that anybody, any firm, any startups will be able to issue a security in the primary market. And then there will be also a license that is they call it a DLT trading, and it would be a license to trade the security on the issued by primary market. So it will be directly tokenization, no digitalization anymore, and from the first entry point, a full ledger-based securities. If I sum up a bit, I would say that and it comes from a founder of a blockchain association, which is a bit ironic, but blockchain is not necessarily solving all the problems. And it's funny when Raja was saying we do not use actually blockchain, we use an API as for the lack of the golden source. And I like that, because if it's not suitable, if it's not optimal for this model, that's fine. It's an enabler. It's an evolution from digitalization to tokenization. It's a possibility. It's offered. It's not a miracle solution.
All right. Well, thanks for this view, Biba. And I'd like to offer the opportunity to Laurent Marochini, perhaps to also share his view on the topic, because I know that you at Société Générale have been doing a lot in that sphere, and I would be interesting to understand what convinced you to support tokenization in the field of securities. But we're constrained in terms of timing, so if I can ask you to be relatively short.
Yeah, because in Société Générale we have the story of an entrepreneurship program we have made 2-3 years ago, where we ask employees of Société Générale to submit IDs. So they submit the IDs to launch a tokenization platform, and this is how an internal startup, Société Générale Forge, and I believe that one of my colleagues was in the panel last week. They have built the tokenization platform. We have done a few number of experimentation, but in April 2019, with this tokenization platform, we have made the first experimentation of issuing a bond in a public blockchain, and we have convinced the top management of Société Générale and the capital market of Société Générale to continue, because we were able to see in terms of operational efficiency the potential of such platform. And as you know, that the best way to predict the future is to build it. So we decided to work more on the tokenization, because we see that the future is now. I would not say that the future is tokenization, of course, but we really see the potential in terms of a game changer.
Thank you, Laurent. And I'd be now interested to hear about the technology provider side. And I guess that's where we turn to the other Laurent Kratz on the panel. Your company advises and provides technology behind many innovative projects in the financial sector. So from where you sit, has the demand for DLT-related projects already reached a level of the demand for digitalization projects?
Well, I have to play the game of the one that is a bit more maximalist, unless it's not fun for this kind of webinar. I would say that thinking of tokenization as part of the digitalization process is missing the point. I think that we are much more in an innovative disruption. You don't get the light bulb by improving the candle. It's really something completely new that will completely change the supply chain with respect to everything about capital markets. So from directly the insurer to the the investor without any intermediaries. That's what's at stake. So for sure, it's a path to convince existing actors, and as a service provider, we do like to do projects with all our customers around that. But the very end point is not reached already by the institutional company. If you look to what's happening now in 𝗕𝗍𝗲, like Uniswap and 𝗕𝗏𝗏, it's no more about having an exchange. The exchange itself is the blockchain. So it's still the early days. But if you look also to everything around post-trade, because of, thank you, Facebook, because of Libra, you have now lots of CBDC projects are going out, because it's all about doing the post-trade automatically. So all the business that are linked to reconciliation and so forth, they are very, very, very at stake with this kind of disruption. So I have to play the game in this webinar, but no, tokenization is much more than digitalization.
Okay, no, thank you, and I must say thank you for also bringing some more controversy. That's what I was expecting. However, besides all the good points you're making, I think we need to recognize that indeed the level of adoption in the market today is still relatively low, and I would like to spend a few minutes now on reflecting upon what actually prevents mainstream adoption of this technology in the field of financial markets. And perhaps the best way is to ask, where do you see today the biggest obstacles, the biggest hurdles? Is it about we heard Emilie telling us about the legal and regulatory framework? Is it a question of interoperability with the legacy world? Is it a question of market buy-in? Is it a question of cost? Is it a question of financial literacy? Why not? So I'd like to ask you, Laurent, since you're with us, what's your view there? And then I'll give the floor to Emilie as well, and Biba and Raja if he's got a view.
I would say it's a combination of all you've listed, but the very first pain point is absolutely the user experience. If you want to go to today to Uniswap with your MetaMask, it's not open for your grandma. So that's probably the very first step. And then regulatory, but with MiCA and with everything that's going on, I think we have opportunities to do, at least within Sandbox, some interesting projects. So first of all, I would say user experience is very painful, and that's why even if Bitcoin is probably 200 billion market cap, but it's still only 10 million active wallets, so it's still very small. I agree. And I would say it's because mainly of the user experience. I won't say that's much about regulatory and so forth, but I'm a tech guy, so I'm a bit biased.
All right, well, let's move to the market guys. Laurent, what do you think, Laurent Marochini?
From my side, I would say that I agree with the famous combination of Ardal, and I will just add the management. So the top management priorities, and also the change management, the culture of change, because when you need to go to tokenization platforms, to a full digitalization, you need to have investment. And as you spend millions in legacy systems 4 or 5 years before, it's quite tricky to reinvest in such platform, and somebody you can be at risk in your own model. So that needs to have a business model behind, and also a very change management principle based.
It's a very interesting point. Thank you, Laurent. I think it's all about business case, right? When you want to motivate people changing, but you need a kind of strategic drive from the top. Indeed,
strategic driver, yeah, from the top management.
Emilie, what's your view there? Is there anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think I agree that's a combination of all of it. And to answer some of the question on the regulatory, and I've seen on the Q&A the fact that we might be too late compared to some other countries. Where do we stand compared to Switzerland and so on? The thing is that we had some countries where some marketing was done to ensure that we would attract the most projects and the most innovation, because we are speaking about digitization, we are speaking about tokenization, DLT, but what's really behind it? Innovation, disruption, and who will be the winner of the biggest piece of cake, actually. And there was a lot of initiative all around the world, more or less successful. And it has a big impact on the view and the reputation of the country. So definitely we can argue that Luxembourg was really slow, even though they took a lot of initiatives. We have to remember that they're the first ones who had a crypto exchange licensed, not under crypto exchange licensing as such, but they were the first ones to have it. They recognize crypto assets. They did a specific law on the blockchain. They have now a project of law for a second blockchain qualification and more in-depth regulation around that. It's not a question of doing things fast, even though it's quite important, but it's doing things right. We are part of the European Union. We have to stick with that and do as we can. But definitely, I would say there are a lot of projects. You know, I've done a call for project to see what's going on in the industry at the moment. And we had projects from pretty much all around Europe or even in Luxembourg that we were not aware of. Because people just think, okay, DLT is also just a technology as such. Everything can be done on a DLT, but it could be done on a database. And this is important to know that a lot of these projects are secretive and we don't know anything about this. And at one point we might say in 1 year time maybe that there are 50 projects on DLT with or without tokenization. That's another topic. But there is something going on, and just don't miss the train and try to figure out what's going on in the DLT industry and with the technology, what you can do, how to improve your processes.
Okay. Thank you for that, Emilie. And I'd like to give at least 1 minute possibility to Biba, because I see you're impatient. Biba, you want to add something to what Emilie just said?
No, I was actually looking at hearing what Laurent was saying and Emilie. And if I actually summarize what everybody is saying, and if we take a step back and just think about a macro vision, huh? We have actually, we are speaking like a product life cycle, you know. We have the introduction phase, the growth phase, the maturity phase, and maybe the decline phase. We are definitely not in the introduction period. We are now in the growth phase. And clear, it's and Laurent opened the discussion today was saying it's been 2 years in STO, it's been 10 years, more than 10 years, and yeah, we don't have enough information at the moment. So when we are talking for capital market about a market that is actually heavily already regulated. So it's not like it's have on one side a heavily regulated market, the capital market, that have been heavily regulated for more than 20 years, consumer protection, market integrity, market conduct, market reporting. And we are just in the middle of a growth phase. And when I hear Emilie saying that there are many projects, for sure there are many projects. And we are expecting to come quicker with accuracy, flexibility, with all these heavily regulated environment. Of course, you have small countries like Switzerland that are not on the EU that are faster, that's for sure. But Luxembourg, to be frank, in my experience, when clients come, they have two ideas. They are looking for something international and quicker. They go to Switzerland because it's flexible. They want to market the EU market. They want to have something reliable and open to EU market. They go to Luxembourg, to be frank. So, and sure, you have also heard in terms of regulation like the AML, the AML CFT or data protection, which can be really interesting in Raja's solution, to be frank. It's not impossible. You have to adapt. You have to reduce and mitigate the risk of the technology. That's all.
Thank you, Biba. I'd like to ask Raja, perhaps from his perspective, and interfacing with issuers and dealers on a daily basis. Where does he feel the main obstacle is to moving towards tokenization for this public capital market activities? If he's got any view, actually.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a topic that constantly comes up, and I think it was alluded to slightly earlier that there is especially the institutions that we're working with are very large institutions. They're heavily regulated. There is a huge change management process. So overhauling an existing process and moving to a completely new process is not something that happens overnight. But also there is a conscious and subconscious evaluation of the value that this migration may or may not provide that's happening individually at every institution, and I think collectively within the public capital markets. And I think most of the participants that we deal with, the large investment banks and their largest customers who are in the capital markets, I don't think there has yet been convincing evidence that the problems they face on a day-to-day basis require tokenization to be solved. Rather, it seems like at a basic level, there's some basic low-hanging fruit of digitalization that needs to happen first before they can even answer the question whether or not tokenization is going to be additive or not. And so since things take years rather than days or months, that's where I think the industry is starting. But the other thing I want to reflect on, I think that Laurent mentioned about the user experience, and I think he was mentioning specifically talking to your grandmother and her usage of Bitcoin or not. One of the hurdles, and there are experts on this panel who are more familiar with this than I am, but to the widespread adoption of tokenization and DLT within the public capital markets is the fact that the predominant currency in use in the economy today is fiat. So if we work with the European Investment Bank or the World Bank or anyone, they need dollars or euros ultimately to fund their activities. So they might tinker with or experiment with a different process to receive those dollars or euros, and they might tinker with a tokenized security, but there is ultimately an off-ramp. And I think the value that tokenization could provide in a maximalist vision is severely inhibited by the off-ramp. Now, if we do move to a world where there is a CBDC, and after this call, I'm going to go downstairs and buy a coffee, and I buy it with a central bank issued digital currency rather than with fiat that is in my credit card, then in that world, these issuers don't need the off-ramp. They are receiving the funds that they are receiving are on the blockchain, which then does open up a whole plethora of securitization and capital markets opportunities because the entire economy is running on the CBDC. So until we get to that point, I think your sort of large, well-established issuers, because there's always going to be the off-ramp, they're going to, I think, potentially question what the value is in tokenization for them.
Thank you very much for bringing this point about CBDC. I was actually expecting it earlier in the discussion, but I think it's a perfect way to kind of close our discussion, because to me it opens a new chapter. We would need a third. We would need a third webinar to actually address it. Now, I'd like to take 30 seconds for each to ask you. If we focus now on the Luxembourg ecosystem, because after all, we're LuxCMA, right? And we should try and see how we can make the most of this new technology breakthrough to position our financial center ahead of the game in Europe. So from a Luxembourg standpoint, where would you see the most obvious case for deployment of securities tokenization? 30 seconds each. Raja, you're on my screen. Do you have any view?
I think, sort of related to my previous point, I think where Luxembourg can really step up is to tackle not just the capital markets angle, but the user angle, the individual on the street. And so if, and we see this in China, we see the CBDC projects are gathering momentum. And if Luxembourg can create an environment where we suddenly see users using CBDC regularly, then that will feed upstream and potentially drive changes in the capital markets. And I think that's where Luxembourg can really be at the forefront.
Okay, thank you. Laurent Marochini?
So due to the size of the market, and we can't fight all the battle, I would be more optimistic for the fund industry and the tokenization of funds. And my second joker will be the issuing of European bond through Luxembourg using tokenization. 2 bets.
All right, I'm sure there is a winning one. I'm moving to the other Laurent, and I keep ladies for the end, right? I'm moving Laurent Kratz. Any view there? Any bet?
Well, I have no very good crystal ball, but just a point about what said Raja, because today the most exchanged cryptocurrency in the world as we speak, 40 billion per day, is dollar. Yes, sir. In fact, it's not Bitcoin. It's already the case. Okay. Just to explain what's happening today. Back to Luxembourg, I'm here since 25 years, and I really like that everything around sandbox and the way to open up at least the test phase, also regarding CBDC, could be a huge gain for Luxembourg to have a specific help for that.
Okay, thank you. Emilie?
Yes, well, for me, the biggest challenge for Luxembourg would be in the fund industry. They're already well placed, and I think where tokenization can really add value would be in the AIFM side, because digital assets and tokenization of these particular funds would add value, would bring a new whole customer base, and that would put Luxembourg on the map for AIFM. We're already on the map for UCITS, so let's extend our horizon.
All right, thank you. Biba?
I couldn't agree more with what Emilie says. And I can tell you it's already happening.
All right, well, that means investment funds are the winners of this short survey then. All right, thank you very much, very much for these interesting views, and I'm sure we could have go on for another hour discussing and exchanging between you all. Truly appreciate you took the time to join us. Let's just take a look and try. I see that let's try and address at least one of the questions that came from the audience, and I can see one. A kind of generic one coming from Yvon. The impact of digitalization and the evolution of value creation via a new kind of economy creates new characteristics to build the business models. Do you agree to review the basics of economy? Do you agree to review the basics of economy on new basis like intangible assets? Yeah, who would raise the hand to address this one? No volunteer? Anybody have a view?
I know quite well Yvan, so we already have some discussion about that, and I believe that indeed we are today in a new world. It's like the custody and the digital custody. It's definitely a new business, a new activity that we will have to take in account in the future, but it's new business model, and definitely we need to review everything in the whole value chain, and also in the different interaction in the different platforms. So we can't put the old world in the new world.
I would say new way to work, new opportunities. We will see new jobs coming up. We will see all jobs coming out. There will be some new jobs that we don't even know about yet. And I just hope that we will stay close to the initial view on DLTs and blockchain and the proposal to actually go more central. And that's something that scares me at the moment, because blockchain and DLT technology could be used to bring more efficiency. And right now we are seeing that we're trying to replicate what we already experience. And that's a bit of a shame for me. But let's cross fingers, it will not remain like this.
All right, thank you for your views, and I'm sorry we can't take another question because of time constraints. Let me again thank my panelists. I really enjoyed the panel, and I hope our audience did as well. Definitely too short, 30 minutes to cover this kind of topic, but certainly I appreciate they took the time to share their expert views on these questions, and I'm sure you know, we have some food for thought internally, all of us, and to consider, you know, how to integrate this into our respective digital adoption path, and also how we can potentially make things progressing collectively at the level of the Luxembourg community. Before we leave, let me just quickly hand over to my colleague 𝗟𝘃𝗲𝗅𝗍𝗄𝗅, who is going to moderate next week's panel. As you know, we're in a kind of back-to-back mode every Wednesday. So Chiara, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. I think you should be able to see me as well.
I don't see you for now, but please go ahead. And if I can ask you to be relatively short, please.
Thanks, Arnaud, for giving me this window. I would like to announce to the public here that the 𝗓𝘂𝗍𝗍 webinar series doesn't stop here. We will have actually 2 webinars entirely dedicated to sustainable finance starting next week, next Wednesday, and the Wednesday of the week following next one. Next week, we will be moving to considering products beyond green bonds. So we will look into products like sustainability-linked bonds, transition bonds, the bonds aligned to the new EU green bond standard, just to name a few of innovations out there. And we will have with us a couple of very prominent speakers, the head of sustainability bonds at HSBC London. We will have the rapporteur of the European Green Bond Standard proposal at the European Commission from 𝗧𝗏, and we will have the treasurer of Waterschap Bank Netherlands. So stay tuned. We will be sending invitations following this webinar this afternoon, and we hope to reconnect with you next Wednesday then.
Thank you, Chiara. It sounds really, really exciting as a program. So once again, thank you to my panelists. Thank you as well to 𝗓𝗏𝗍𝗏 for facilitating this webinar, this virtual webinar. And I must remind everyone that actually this podcast or this webinar is recorded. So for those who had the bad idea to miss it, you can certainly invite your colleagues to reconnect later on and to watch it online on the 𝗓𝘂𝗍𝗍 website, I'm sure. So thank you so much again for your input, and please do not forget to tune in next Wednesday. Have a great day.